I'd
The
like to
husband
introduce you
suddenly
all to my
became
new wife,
unusually
Jessica.
caring, preparing a thoughtful breakfast the
It's
moment
so
he learned
lovely
she
to
was
finally
pregnant.
meet you all.
But the nausea was unbearable. Every smell turned her stomach, so she quietly gave the untouched meal to his secretary. An hour later, the secretary was found vomiting uncontrollably all over the office carpet. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories, your own family story channel. May the Almighty cover every woman with divine protection, inner strength and honor that no hardship can ever take away. May your hearts remain gentle even after pain, your faith remain strong even after storms, and your love continue to heal everyone who comes near you. You are the backbone of families, the quiet force behind every success, the grace that holds this world together. May your bodies be protected with good health, your minds filled with peace, and your lives guided toward purpose and fulfillment. May no tear fall without comfort, no struggle come without relief, and no prayer rise without being answered. May you always be respected, valued, and cherished for the endless love you give. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." The smell of fresh orange juice and Belgian waffles should have made Ramona Cooper smile, but instead, her stomach lurched violently as she opened her eyes that Tuesday morning. Mitchell Marshall stood beside their bed holding a tray loaded with breakfast, his face arranged in an expression of tender concern she hadn't seen in 8 months. "Good morning, beautiful," he said softly, setting the tray on her nightstand. "I made your favorites. You need to eat well now that you're eating for two." Ramona pushed herself up against the pillows, one hand instinctively moving to her still flat belly. She'd told him about the pregnancy just last night, expecting his usual cold indifference. Instead, he'd held her, kissed her forehead, and promised everything would be different now. She'd wanted to believe him so badly that she'd ignored the voice in her head whispering that people don't change overnight. "Mitchell, this is so sweet," she managed, though another wave of nausea hit her as the smell of eggs and syrup filled her nostrils. "But I'm feeling really sick right now. The doctor said morning sickness might be bad in the first trimester." "You need to eat something, Ramona." His voice held an edge she couldn't quite identify. "You're too thin as it is. The baby needs nutrition." She looked at the plate. Perfectly scrambled eggs with fresh herbs, waffles with strawberries arranged in a heart shape, orange juice in a crystal glass. He'd put real effort into this. Guilt washed over her as another surge of nausea made her throat tighten. "I know, honey, I'm sorry. Maybe in an hour when my stomach settles." Mitchell's jaw tightened for just a moment before his smile returned. "Of course, I'll wrap it up for you. Maybe you can have it at the office later." He disappeared into the kitchen while Ramona breathed through the nausea, wondering when her husband had become so attentive. For months, he'd barely looked at her. He came home late, spent weekends on his phone, and slept on his side of the bed, like there was an invisible wall between them. She'd been planning to ask for marriage counseling before she discovered she was pregnant. Now, suddenly, he was making her breakfast and using words like "we" and "us" again. Mitchell returned with the plate wrapped in aluminum foil and placed it in her work bag. "There, promise me you'll try to eat it, okay? For the baby." "I promise," she lied, knowing that even the thought of food right now made her want to vomit. He kissed her forehead and left for work. Ramona spent 20 minutes in the bathroom, then showered and dressed for her own day at Cooper Designs, the interior design firm she'd built from nothing 5 years ago. It was thriving now, with 3 major commercial projects underway and a waiting list of residential clients. She was proud of what she'd created, even if Mitchell rarely acknowledged it anymore. At 9:30, her phone rang. Melissa Wilson's name flashed on the screen. Mitchell's secretary calling her directly was unusual, but not unheard of. "Mrs. Marshall, I'm at your house to pick up some files Mitchell forgot. He said you'd let me in." Ramona frowned. Mitchell hadn't mentioned anything about files, but Melissa had been his secretary for 3 years and had been to their house dozens of times. "Sure, Melissa. I'm actually just leaving. I'll meet you outside." When she pulled into the driveway, Melissa was already there in her sensible sedan, dressed in a navy skirt suit that Mitchell had once commented was very professional at a company dinner. Ramona had always found Melissa pleasant, but unremarkable. Mid-20s, pretty in a forgettable way, always efficient and courteous. "Thanks for this, Mrs. Marshall," Melissa said as Ramona unlocked the front door. Mitchell was really stressed about those client contracts. "It's fine," Ramona gestured toward Mitchell's home office. "They're probably in there. Help yourself." As Melissa headed down the hall, Ramona remembered the breakfast. She couldn't stomach the thought of eating it, but wasting food felt wrong. "Melissa, before you go, would you like some breakfast? Mitchell made this huge spread this morning, and with the morning sickness, I can't eat any of it. It seems a shame to throw it away." Melissa appeared in the doorway, surprised. "Oh, I couldn't take your food, Mrs. Marshall. Please, I insist. It's really good, and you'd be doing me a favor. I feel terrible wasting it." Ramona pulled the wrapped plate from her bag and held it out. "There's waffles, eggs, orange juice in the fridge if you want it. Mitchell used those herbs I grow on the windowsill." Melissa hesitated, then smiled. "Well, if you're sure. I did skip breakfast this morning. Thank you, Mrs. Marshall. That's really kind. Call me Ramona, and it's no problem at all." 20 minutes later, Ramona was at her office reviewing fabric samples when her phone exploded with calls. First Mitchell, then 3 unknown numbers, then Mitchell again. Her stomach dropped even before she answered. "Ramona, where are you?" Mitchell's voice was tight, almost panicked. "At my office. What's wrong?" "It's Melissa. She collapsed at the office. The paramedics are here. It's bad, Ramona. Really bad." Ramona's blood turned to ice. "What happened?" "I don't know. She was fine, then suddenly she started vomiting everywhere, and then she collapsed and started convulsing. There's foam coming out of her mouth." "Jesus Christ, Ramona, there's so much foam." She was already grabbing her keys, running for her car. "Which hospital?" "We're still here at the office. The paramedics are loading her now. St. Catherine's, I think they said." Ramona drove 90 miles an hour through red lights, her mind racing. Melissa had been fine 20 minutes ago. The only thing different was the breakfast. Oh God, the breakfast she'd given her. Mitchell's breakfast. The breakfast meant for Ramona. She screeched into the office parking lot to find an ambulance pulling away, lights flashing. Mitchell stood on the sidewalk surrounded by their colleagues, his face the color of old newspaper. When he saw Ramona's car, something changed in his expression. Not relief, not concern. Terror. Their eyes met across the parking lot, and Ramona knew. She knew with absolute certainty that rocked her to her core. He'd expected to see paramedics loading a different woman into that ambulance. He'd expected Ramona to be the one convulsing and foaming at the mouth. He'd expected his wife to be dying. Mitchell walked toward her on unsteady legs. "Thank God you're okay," he said, but his voice trembled with something that wasn't gratitude. "I gave Melissa my breakfast," Ramona heard herself say. "The one you made me this morning. I gave it to her because I was too nauseous to eat it." Mitchell's face drained of what little color remained. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Other colleagues were approaching now, asking questions, demanding to know what happened. Someone mentioned food poisoning. Someone else said they'd heard the word toxin from the paramedics. Ramona got back in her car without another word. She drove home in a daze, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. At every red light she touched her belly where their baby grew, and horror washed over her in waves. He'd tried to kill them. Mitchell had tried to poison her and their unborn child, and only Melissa's accidental consumption of that breakfast had saved them both. At home she walked directly to their bedroom and opened Mitchell's closet. The jacket he'd worn that morning hung on its usual hook. She searched the pockets with trembling fingers, and there it was in the inner lining, a small glass bottle, empty except for residue coating the inside. The label had been scraped off, but there was a receipt folded beneath it. Oleander extract. Purchased 3 days ago from an online botanical supplier. And there, clear as day, was Mitchell's name and credit card number. Ramona photographed everything with her phone, her hands remarkably steady now. She carefully returned the bottle to exactly where she'd found it, making sure the jacket hung at the same angle. Then she sat on the edge of their bed and stared at her phone screen, at the evidence of her husband's attempt to murder her. She should call the police. She should call her lawyer. She should call her mother and sob into the phone. Instead, she opened her laptop and began researching. Not criminal defense attorneys or divorce lawyers. No, Ramona researched something entirely different. Hostile corporate takeovers, forensic accounting, and the statute of limitations for attempted murder in their state. Then she made a call to someone Mitchell would never expect. "Melissa, this is Ramona Marshall. I know you're probably still in the emergency room, but when you're released, we need to talk about what my husband did to both of us." Chapter 2. The Architecture of Betrayal. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Melissa Wilson lay in the narrow bed, an IV drip feeding fluids into her arm while monitors beeped steadily beside her. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow with exhaustion and confusion. When Ramona walked through the door carrying a bouquet of white lilies, Melissa flinched. "Please don't be afraid," Ramona said quietly, setting the flowers on the windowsill. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because we both almost died yesterday, and I think we deserve to know why." Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "Mrs. Marshall, I'm so sorry. I don't understand what happened. The doctors say I was poisoned, but I didn't eat anything except—" Her voice trailed off as realization crept across her face. "Except the breakfast I gave you." Ramona pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "The breakfast my husband prepared specifically for me the morning after I told him I was pregnant." "Oh my God." Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Ramona opened her phone and pulled up the photographs. The oleander bottle, the receipt, the purchase confirmation with Mitchell's name. She held the screen where Melissa could see it clearly. "He tried to poison me. You ate my breakfast by accident. That means we're both alive because of pure chance, not because Mitchell Marshall suddenly developed a conscience." Melissa stared at the photos, her face crumbling. "I think I'm going to be sick again. I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to tell me everything, not about the poisoning, about my husband, about whatever relationship you two have that would make him comfortable enough to commit murder while you're working 10 feet away from his office." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Melissa spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "We've been sleeping together for 3 years. Ramona had suspected, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a physical blow. 3 years. That would be since your wedding day." Melissa couldn't meet Ramona's eyes. "The reception. Mitchell was drunk and angry about something, I never knew what. I was working the coat check because the company was providing event stuff. He pulled me into a storage room and kissed me. I should have stopped it. I should have quit the next day. But he kept saying his marriage was a mistake, that you trapped him, that he was planning to leave you once the timing was right." "What timing?" Ramona's voice was eerily calm. "Financial timing. He said you had money and business connections he needed to establish himself. Once he was successful enough on his own, he'd divorce you, and we could be together." Melissa laughed bitterly. "I was so stupid, so pathetically stupid. Where did you meet? For 3 years, where?" "He rents an apartment in Riverside, studio place, barely furnished. Said it was for business meetings if anyone ever asked. We'd meet there twice a week, sometimes more." Melissa's voice cracked. "He told me he loved me. He said we'd have children someday. He talked about our future like it was real." Ramona absorbed this information with the detached precision of an architect reviewing blueprints. "Did anyone know? His family? His business partner Derek?" Melissa nodded miserably. "Derek knew from the beginning. He thought it was funny. He'd make jokes about it at the office when you weren't around. And Mitchell's sister Claire, she figured it out about a year ago. She told me I was smart to be with a winner instead of waiting around hoping Mitchell would settle for damaged goods like you." The words should have hurt, but Ramona felt nothing except cold calculation. Derek, Mitchell's business partner, Derek Hutchins? Yes, he's been helping Mitchell with something else too. Melissa swallowed hard. With your company, your design firm. What about my company? They've been stealing from you for almost 2 years now. Mitchell has access to your accounts somehow, and Derek set up offshore transfers. They've moved hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. I don't know all the details, but I've seen the bank statements Mitchell keeps in his desk drawer. There's accounts in the Cayman Islands with both their names on them. Ramona's hands clenched in her lap, but her voice remained steady. How much total? The last statement I saw was $870,000. That was 2 months ago. Nearly $900,000. Money Ramona had earned through her talent, her networking, her endless hours of work. Money Mitchell had systematically stolen while sleeping in her bed and eating meals at her table. Who else knows about this? Vanessa. Your friend Vanessa. Melissa looked ashamed even saying the name. She helped Mitchell set up some of the transfers. She works at that bank on Porter Street, and she'd process them personally so there wouldn't be red flags. Mitchell said you'd never notice because you were too focused on the creative side of your business to watch the finances closely. Vanessa. The woman Ramona had considered her closest friend for 6 years. The woman who'd been her maid of honor. The woman she'd helped through a bankruptcy by lending her $15,000 without asking for it back. How long has Vanessa been helping him? About 18 months. Mitchell paid her 5% of everything they moved. She's been saving it all, planning to move to Florida with her husband next year. The betrayal was so complete, so total, that Ramona almost laughed. Her husband, his secretary, his business partner, his sister, her best friend. All of them conspiring together, laughing at her stupidity while she worked 70-hour weeks and paid for family dinners and smiled through holidays. Is there anyone else I should know about? Melissa shook her head, then stopped. Wait. Mitchell's been meeting with someone from his father's estate attorney's office. I don't know what about, but he seemed stressed about it. Something about inheritance and timeline concerns. Ramona filed that information away for later investigation. She stood, smoothing her skirt. Melissa, I need to know something, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you love him? Melissa stared at her lap for a long moment. I thought I did. But a man who would poison his pregnant wife, that's not love. That's not even human. I was stupid and selfish and I destroyed your marriage, but I'm not a murderer. I don't want to be connected to whatever evil lives inside Mitchell Marshall. Good. Ramona pulled a business card from her purse and set it on the bedside table. That's my attorney. You're going to call him today and tell him everything you just told me. Every detail, every date, every account number you remember. You're going to provide recordings if you have them, emails, text messages, anything that proves what Mitchell and Derek have been doing, and you're going to sign a sworn statement about the affair and the theft. And if I refuse? Ramona's smile was colder than winter. Then I give these poison photos to the police with your name listed as Mitchell's accomplice to attempted murder. After all, you had access to our house. You knew about the pregnancy. You could have easily helped him plan it. Who do you think a jury would believe? The grieving, betrayed wife, or the mistress who stood to gain everything if I died? Melissa's face went white. You wouldn't. I absolutely would. I'm giving you one choice, Melissa. Help me destroy the man who tried to kill us both, or go down with him. You have until 5 o'clock today to call my attorney. After that, I make my own calls. Ramona walked out of the hospital room without looking back. In the parking lot, she sat in her car and allowed herself 30 seconds of pure rage. She screamed until her throat was raw, pounded her fists on the steering wheel until her hands ached, and let tears pour down her face. Then she wiped her eyes, fixed her makeup in the rearview mirror, and drove to her office. She had 15 different plans to set in motion, and every single one of them would end with Mitchell Marshall begging for mercy he would never receive. At her desk, she made the first call, a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering hidden assets. The second call, a corporate attorney who'd built a reputation destroying men who underestimated women in business. The third call, a private investigator who could document affairs and gather evidence that would hold up in any court. The fourth call was the most important. "Mr. Thompson, this is Ramona Marshall. I understand your construction company provides 70% of the revenue for Marshall and Hutchins Development. I'd like to discuss some concerns I have about their business practices. Do you have time for lunch tomorrow?" By the time she hung up, Richard Thompson had agreed to meet her. Mitchell's largest client, the foundation of his entire company, was about to hear some very interesting information about where his money had been going. Ramona pulled up her calendar and began making more appointments. Coffee with Derek's wife to catch up as friends, dinner with Mitchell's father to discuss family matters, a casual meet-up with Vanessa to plan a girls' trip. One by one, she would get close to every person who'd helped Mitchell betray her, and one by one, she would destroy them all. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mitchell. "Where are you? We need to talk about what happened to Melissa. Are you okay? I'm worried about you." Ramona typed back, "I'm fine, honey. Just shaken up. I'm planning something special for us. Remember, our anniversary is in 6 weeks. I want to throw a big party to celebrate our marriage and announce the pregnancy properly. You deserve to be honored, Mitchell, after everything you've done for me." His response came immediately. "That sounds perfect. I love you." She stared at those 3 words until they lost all meaning. Then she opened her laptop and began designing the most beautiful party invitation anyone had ever seen. 200 guests, open bar, live music, elegant venue, and a multimedia presentation that would expose every single lie Mitchell Marshall had ever told. Her phone rang. Her attorney. "Mrs. Marshall? Melissa Wilson just called. She's coming in to give her statement this afternoon. She sounds terrified but cooperative." "Good," Ramona said. "Tell her I'll make sure she's protected if she tells the complete truth, and make sure every word is recorded and notarized. May I ask what you're planning to do with this information?" Ramona smiled at her reflection in the dark computer screen. "I'm going to throw my husband the anniversary party he'll never forget, and then I'm going to take everything he ever loved and burn it to the ground while he watches." Chapter 3. The Web She Weaves, 6 Weeks. That's how long Ramona gave herself to become the perfect wife while systematically destroying Mitchell's entire world in secret. She woke each morning and kissed him goodbye with a smile. She asked about his day and listened to his lies with patient interest. She let him place his hand on her barely visible baby bump and talk about their future together. And every moment of tenderness made her hate him more. But Mitchell noticed nothing. He was too busy believing his own performance as the devoted husband-to-be. He came home with flowers, he made dinner, he rubbed her feet while they watched television. It was exactly what Ramona had craved for the past 2 years of their marriage, and now that she was receiving it, all she could taste was the bitter poison of knowing it was built on lies and murder. While Mitchell slept beside her, Ramona worked. The forensic accountant had traced every stolen dollar. $893,000 moved through 17 different transactions, all authorized by Mitchell's access to her business accounts. Derek had set up the offshore entities. Vanessa had processed the transfers at her bank. It was systematic theft executed over 23 months. The private investigator had documented 3 years of Mitchell's affair with Melissa. Hotel receipts, apartment rental agreements, photographs of them kissing outside restaurants, video of them entering the Riverside studio apartment together. There were text messages recovered from Melissa's phone backups, emails discussing their future, voice memos of Mitchell promising to leave Ramona once the timing was right. But Ramona's most devastating discoveries came from her personal investigation. She'd started having coffee with Derek's wife, Amanda, every Thursday morning. Amanda was a sweet woman who believed her husband worked late for legitimate business reasons. Over lattes and croissants, Ramona carefully mentioned noticing some unusual transactions in her company accounts. Nothing serious, just curious about normal business procedures. Amanda, who managed Derek's personal finances, mentioned he'd been making large cash withdrawals recently for investment opportunities he refused to discuss. Men and their pride, Ramona had said sympathetically. Mitchell does the same thing, wants to surprise me with his business wins. Amanda laughed. Exactly. Derek keeps saying we'll retire early from these deals with Mitchell. I just hope it's all legal. I'm sure it is, Ramona reassured her, mentally noting that Amanda had no idea her husband was stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. That information would be useful soon. She'd also arranged lunch with Mitchell's father, Richard Marshall, under the pretense of planning a surprise retirement celebration for him. Richard was a stern man who'd built his real estate fortune through ruthless business practices, but he seemed genuinely pleased that Ramona was making an effort to honor him. Over expensive steaks, she asked thoughtful questions about his legacy and how he'd structured his estate planning. Most everything goes to Mitchell and Claire equally, Richard explained. They'll inherit the properties, the investment accounts, everything. I've worked hard to make sure they're set for life. That's so generous, Ramona said warmly. Mitchell mentioned you recently updated your will. He seemed happy about it. Richard frowned slightly. I did, yes. Had to make some changes after Mitchell suggested certain amendments. He's always had a good head for these things. Amendments? Ramona kept her voice casual. Nothing major. Just adjustments to how the assets would be distributed if something happened to me before a certain date. Mitchell thought it would protect everyone's interests. Richard's frown deepened. Though I admit my attorney seemed concerned about some of the clauses Mitchell proposed. Something about borrowing against the estate for business ventures. Ramona's pulse quickened, but she smiled sweetly. I'm sure Mitchell knows what he's doing. He's always thinking about the family's future. I suppose. Richard didn't look convinced. Martha, my attorney, actually called me last week saying she needed to discuss some documentation Mitchell submitted with my signature. I don't remember signing anything recently, but with everything I sign for the properties, it's hard to keep track. Ramona filed that information away carefully. Mitchell had been forging his father's signature. That was fraud, and potentially enough to get him disowned completely when Richard found out. She made a mental note to contact Martha, the attorney, soon. Her meetings with Vanessa were perhaps the most difficult. They met for dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant, the same one where they'd celebrated Ramona landing her first major client 4 years ago. Vanessa hugged her tightly and cooed over Ramona's baby news, asking a million questions about pregnancy symptoms and nursery colors. I'm so happy for you, Vanessa gushed. You and Mitchell deserve this. Ramona wanted to throw her wine glass at Vanessa's lying face, but instead she smiled. Thank you. It means so much to have you in my life, Vanessa. You've always been there for me. Always, Vanessa agreed, squeezing Ramona's hand across the table. While they ate, Ramona casually mentioned that she was reviewing her company's finances to make sure everything was in order before the baby arrived. Just making sure all the accounts are properly organized. You know how complicated business banking can be. Vanessa's smile tightened slightly. Oh, for sure. Are you finding everything in order? Mostly, though I noticed some transfers that went through your branch at Porter Street Bank. I'm sure they're all legitimate, but I'm going to have my accountant review everything just to be thorough. You understand, right? Just being responsible. Vanessa's face went pale. Of course, that's smart thinking. If anything looks unusual, I'm sure you'd let me know, right? Since we're such good friends. Ramona's voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were steel. Absolutely. We're like sisters. Vanessa couldn't meet her gaze. After dinner, Ramona hugged Vanessa goodbye and whispered in her ear, I love you so much. I don't know what I'd do without you. She felt Vanessa trembling and knew the woman understood the walls were closing in. At home that night, Mitchell was waiting up for her. Where were you? Dinner with Vanessa. Why? You didn't tell me you were going out. His tone was slightly accusatory. I didn't realize I needed permission, Ramona said lightly. Is something wrong? Mitchell's expression softened immediately. "No, sorry, I was just worried. With everything that happened to Melissa, I guess I'm paranoid about you being safe." Melissa's name hung in the air between them. She'd been released from the hospital after 3 days and had immediately resigned from her position at Mitchell's company, citing health concerns. Mitchell had barely mentioned her since, and Ramona knew it was because he was terrified Ramona might connect dots he desperately needed to keep separate. "I'm fine, Mitchell. I'm being careful." Ramona kissed his cheek and headed toward their bedroom. "I'm exhausted, though. The baby's making me tired all the time." "How far along are you now?" "Almost 8 weeks." She placed his hand on her stomach even though there was nothing to feel yet. "In 6 months, we'll have a little one running around." Mitchell smiled, and for just a moment Ramona saw genuine emotion in his eyes. Was he actually excited about the baby, or was he just relieved that his attempt to murder them both had failed, meaning he didn't have to live with the guilt? She couldn't tell anymore. Maybe he was such a good liar that even he believed his own performance. The next morning, Ramona met with the corporate attorney, Patricia Chen, a woman famous for destroying powerful men in business litigation. Patricia reviewed all the evidence Ramona had gathered, the affair documentation, the financial theft, the poison attempt, and now the possible fraud against Mitchell's father. "This is extraordinary," Patricia said. "You've built an airtight case in 6 weeks. Most people take months to gather this level of evidence." "I'm motivated." Ramona's voice was flat. "I can see that. What exactly do you want to do with all this?" "I want to destroy him completely. I want him to lose his company, his reputation, his family, his money, and his freedom. I want him to spend the rest of his life knowing that underestimating me was the biggest mistake he ever made." Patricia smiled. "I think we can arrange that, but I have to ask, why not just press criminal charges for attempted murder? He'd go to prison immediately." "Because prison would be too easy. He'd serve time, get out eventually, and move on with his life. I want something more permanent. I want him to lose everything he values, watch me thrive, and know he'll never touch my life again. I want him to live with the consequences of his evil every single day until he dies." "Then let's talk about the anniversary party," Patricia said, pulling out a legal pad. "Because if you're going to expose him publicly, we need to make sure it's done in a way that protects you legally while destroying him completely." They spent 3 hours planning every detail. The party would include all the evidence presented on screens around the venue, each revelation timed for maximum impact. Patricia would have law enforcement present as security so they could take statements immediately if needed. Ramona would announce her intentions to sue civilly for damages rather than press criminal charges initially, which would give her control over Mitchell's fate. "Keep the criminal charges as leverage," Patricia advised. "Let him know you could send him to prison at any moment, but you're choosing not to. That kind of power over someone is more terrifying than actual imprisonment." The invitations went out 3 weeks before the party. 200 guests received elegant cream-colored cards with gold lettering. "Please join us in celebrating the marriage of Ramona and Mitchell Marshall, an evening of revelations and new beginnings." Mitchell loved the invitations. He showed them to everyone at work, bragging about his thoughtful wife and their strong marriage. Derek made jokes about being forced to dress up. Claire commented that it was about time Ramona publicly acknowledged what a catch Mitchell was. Vanessa texted, "This is going to be amazing. So proud of you for fighting for your marriage." Ramona smiled at every response and continued planning the most devastating evening of Mitchell Marshall's life. She ordered a multimedia presentation team to create video compilations from all her evidence. She hired the best caterer in the city. She rented the ballroom at the Grandview Hotel, the same place where she and Mitchell had gotten married 3 years ago. She wanted him to see his life end in the exact spot where he'd promised to love and cherish her. In the final week before the party, Ramona made 5 additional invitations. These went out privately, by hand, with personal notes. One to Detective Sarah Brennan, who'd investigated Melissa's food poisoning and had questions about the toxicology report. One to Richard Thompson, Mitchell's biggest client. who'd already expressed concerns about financial irregularities. One to Martha, Richard Marshall's attorney, who'd called Ramona back after their father-son conversation with urgent questions about forged signatures. One to Amanda Hutchins, Derek's unsuspecting wife, and one to James Rodriguez, a reporter from the Business Tribune who specialized in corporate fraud exposés. Each invitation included a note: "Come witness the truth that's been hidden in plain sight. You deserve to know what's been done in your name." The night before the party, Mitchell crawled into bed and pulled Ramona close. "I can't wait for tomorrow night," he murmured against her hair. "Getting to celebrate our marriage with everyone we love and announcing that we're having a baby. It's perfect. You're perfect." Ramona let him hold her and said nothing. She stared at the ceiling in the darkness and counted down the hours until Mitchell Marshall's entire world would implode in front of 200 witnesses. Let him sleep peacefully tonight. Tomorrow, he would never sleep well again. Chapter 4. The Anniversary Massacre. The Grandview Hotel ballroom looked like something out of a luxury magazine. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in ivory linens, each centerpiece a masterpiece of white roses and gold candles. A live jazz band played softly in the corner while servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everything was elegant, expensive, and absolutely perfect. Ramona had spared no expense, and every guest who arrived commented on the stunning attention to detail. Mitchell stood at the entrance greeting guests like a king holding court. He wore a custom navy suit that Ramona had purchased for him last week, his hair perfectly styled, his smile bright and confident. He shook hands, kissed cheeks, and accepted congratulations with the ease of a man who believed himself untouchable. Ramona watched him from across the room, her hand resting on her barely visible baby bump. She wore a flowing emerald dress that made her look ethereal and powerful simultaneously. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, diamonds sparkled at her throat, and every person who approached her complimented her radiance. She accepted their kind words with grace and smiled until her face ached. By 7 o'clock, all 200 guests had arrived and been seated. The 5 special guests Ramona had personally invited were scattered throughout the room. Detective Brennan at a table near the back, Richard Thompson seated with other business associates, Martha the attorney positioned where she could see Richard Marshall clearly, Amanda Hutchins sitting with friends from Derek's office, and James Rodriguez, the reporter, seated strategically with his camera crew that everyone assumed was there to capture the celebration. Mitchell clinked his glass and stood at the center table. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Ramona and I are so grateful to be surrounded by the people we love most." He gazed at his wife with what looked like genuine adoration. 3 years ago, I married the most incredible woman I've ever met. She's brilliant, talented, and has built a business from nothing that makes me proud every single day." The crowd applauded. Several people dabbed at their eyes. "And now," Mitchell continued, his voice thick with emotion, "I get to share some news that makes tonight even more special. Ramona and I are expecting our first child." The ballroom erupted in cheers. Women rushed to hug Ramona. Men clapped Mitchell on the back. Someone started a toast, and soon everyone was raising glasses while the band played something celebratory. It was perfect. Mitchell was beaming, and Ramona thought she might actually be sick from the hypocrisy of it all. She let the celebration continue for 30 minutes. Let Mitchell bask in the admiration. Let everyone eat and drink and relax into the warm glow of the evening. Then, as dessert was being served, Ramona stood and gently took the microphone from the band leader. "Thank you all so much for being here," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the excellent sound system. "Mitchell spoke beautifully about our marriage, and I'm so touched by all your kind words tonight. But there's something else I need to share with you. Something important." Mitchell looked confused but smiled encouragingly. Several people settled back into their seats, expecting a sweet speech about love and partnership. I wanted everyone we love to be here tonight, Ramona continued, because I'm about to reveal some truths that will change many of your lives. And I believe you all deserve to know what's been happening behind your backs. Mitchell's smile faltered slightly. Derek, seated 3 tables away, had gone very still. The lights dimmed, and the large screens positioned around the ballroom flickered to life. The first image was a photograph of Mitchell and Melissa kissing in a restaurant parking lot. The timestamp showed a date from 2 weeks after Mitchell and Ramona's wedding. The room went silent. Someone gasped. "That's my husband," Ramona said calmly, "kissing his secretary, but don't worry, it gets worse." More photos appeared in rapid succession. Mitchell and Melissa entering the riverside apartment, embracing on a hotel balcony, shopping together for furniture, sitting at intimate restaurant tables. Each image was time-stamped, creating an undeniable 3-year timeline of their affair. Mitchell jumped to his feet. "Ramona, what the hell are you doing?" "Sit down, Mitchell," she said coldly. "We're just getting started." He tried to rush toward the AV equipment, but 2 security guards Ramona had hired stepped smoothly into his path. Mitchell looked around wildly, seeing the shock on every face. The phone's already coming out to record this disaster. The screens changed to show financial documents, bank statements, wire transfer records, offshore account information. Ramona narrated calmly, "While my husband was having an affair with his secretary, he was also stealing from my company. Over the past 2 years, he and his business partner Derek Hutchins moved $893,000 from my business accounts into offshore accounts they controlled jointly." Derek stood so fast his chair toppled backward. "That's a lie. She's making this up." "Actually, Derek, I have every transaction documented by a forensic accountant. Your electronic signatures are on each authorization. The Cayman Islands accounts are in both your names." Ramona's voice never wavered. "Oh, and Amanda, I'm sorry you had to find out like this, but your husband has been stealing money and lying to you for 2 years. You might want to speak to my attorney after tonight about protecting yourself financially." Amanda Hutchins sat frozen, her face a mask of horror. The presentation continued, text messages between Mitchell and Melissa discussing how stupid Ramona was, how she'd never noticed the missing money. Voice recordings of Mitchell telling Melissa that divorcing Ramona would be strategically foolish until he'd secured enough assets. Emails between Mitchell and Derek planning how to liquidate Ramona's company once Mitchell inherited it. "Inherited it?" someone in the crowd asked. "What do you mean inherited?" Ramona's face hardened into something terrifying. "I'm so glad you asked, because here's where the story gets truly dark." The screens changed again, this time showing a purchase receipt for oleander extract, Mitchell's credit card number clearly visible. Then, hospital records documenting Melissa Wilson's emergency treatment for poisoning. Then, toxicology reports confirming oleander presence in her system. The room exploded in gasps and whispers. Several people stood, unsure whether to leave or stay. 10 weeks ago, Ramona said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "My husband prepared breakfast for me the morning after I told him I was pregnant. I was too nauseous to eat it, so I gave it to his secretary when she stopped by our house. Within an hour, Melissa was convulsing and foaming at the mouth in his office, being treated for poisoning." Mitchell's face had turned the color of old cheese. "I didn't... That's not... Ramona, you're insane." "Am I?" Ramona turned to look directly at him. "Then explain the oleander bottle I found in your jacket, the same jacket you wore while cooking that breakfast. Explain the purchase receipt with your name on it, dated 3 days before you tried to poison me." "I bought that for garden pests. I never tried to poison anyone." "Really? Then let's look at your text messages to Derek." The final screen appeared, and it was the most damning evidence of all. A text conversation between Mitchell and Derek from the morning of the breakfast. Mitchell, "Problem solved by tonight. Once she's gone, we split everything 50-50. Derek, "You sure about this? Seems risky." Mitchell, "She's pregnant. Makes it look natural. Pregnancy complications happen all the time. Plus baby was bad timing anyway." Derek, "Cold-blooded man, but yeah, you're right. Better now than later." The room erupted. People were yelling, crying, pulling out phones to call police. Someone screamed that they needed to get away from Mitchell. 3 different guests were recording everything on their phones. Mitchell tried to run for the exit, but the security guards grabbed him while chaos swirled around them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ramona said, her voice somehow still calm above the pandemonium, "I'd like to introduce you to Detective Sarah Brennan, who has been investigating the suspicious circumstances of Melissa Wilson's poisoning. Detective, I believe you have some questions for my husband." Detective Brennan stood from her table at the back and began walking toward Mitchell, 2 uniformed officers appearing from the hallway behind her. But Ramona wasn't finished. She turned to where Mitchell's father sat, his face grey with shock. "Richard, I'm so sorry you had to learn this way, but your son has also been forging your signature on estate documents to borrow against your inheritance to cover gambling debts. Martha, your attorney, has the documentation if you'd like to review it." Richard Marshall looked like he might have a heart attack. He turned to Mitchell with an expression of such betrayal and disgust that several people looked away. And then Ramona delivered her final blow. "Claire, I know you're here somewhere. I wanted to make sure you knew that your brother has been having an affair with your husband Thomas for the past 6 months. I have photos if you need proof, but I think Thomas's face right now tells you everything you need to know." Claire Marshall's scream could probably be heard in the parking lot. She launched herself at Thomas, who tried to run but tripped over someone's purse. The ballroom had descended into complete chaos. People screaming, police trying to establish order, Mitchell being questioned by Detective Brennan, Derek trying to escape through a service entrance only to be caught by more security, Amanda sobbing while friends tried to comfort her, Richard Marshall demanding Mitchell be arrested immediately. Through it all, Ramona stood at the center of the storm, one hand on her belly, watching the destruction she'd orchestrated with the precision of a master architect, every secret exposed, every lie revealed, every betrayer facing consequences they'd never imagined. She caught Mitchell's eye across the chaos. He was being handcuffed now, still trying to explain, still trying to lie his way out of the truth on display all around him. Their gazes locked, and Ramona smiled. It wasn't warm or forgiving. It was the smile of a woman who'd just burned down an entire kingdom and was standing in the ashes without a single regret. "I told you this would be unforgettable," she said quietly, though he couldn't possibly hear her over the noise. She picked up her purse, nodded politely to the reporter who'd captured everything on video, and walked out of her own anniversary party while her husband's life crumbled behind her. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Ramona took a deep breath, placed both hands on her belly, and whispered to the baby growing inside her. "Your father tried to kill us, but we survived. And now we're going to build something so beautiful he'll spend the rest of his life regretting what he lost." She got in her car and drove away from the Grandview Hotel, leaving behind 200 witnesses to Mitchell Marshall's absolute destruction. And she never looked back once. Chapter 5. The empire she built from his ashes. Mitchell wasn't arrested that night despite Detective Brennan's presence. Ramona had specifically instructed her attorney to hold back on pressing criminal charges until she was ready. The detective took his statement, confiscated his phone, and told him not to leave town while the investigation continued. Mitchell left the destroyed anniversary party in a taxi, alone, while everyone he knew stayed behind to discuss what they'd witnessed. By Monday morning, the fallout was catastrophic and swift. Marshall and Hutchins Development fired both Mitchell and Derek immediately. Their clients abandoned them within hours. Richard Thompson, Mitchell's largest client who generated millions in revenue, released a public statement terminating all business relationships and hinting at possible legal action for fraud. The company's remaining partners filed a lawsuit against Derek for the stolen funds. Mitchell's apartment lease was in the company's name, so he lost that too. He moved his belongings to a cheap studio across town, the kind of place with stained carpets and neighbors who yelled through paper-thin walls. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. His credit cards were maxed out. Within a week, Mitchell Marshall went from successful businessman to unemployed pariah, living on borrowed money. But that was only the beginning of Ramona's revenge. While Mitchell scrambled to find any job that would hire him, Ramona was busy acquiring his old life piece by piece. Marshall and Hutchins' development was bleeding money and desperate. Their remaining partners were panicking about the publicity disaster and the pending lawsuits. Ramona approached them with an offer. She would buy controlling shares of the company at a fraction of their value, absorb their legal liabilities, and rebrand the firm under her own design company's umbrella. They accepted within 48 hours. By the end of the month, Ramona owned 51% of Mitchell's former company. She installed herself as CEO, fired everyone who'd known about the affair and theft, and hired the best architects and developers in the state. She rebranded it as Cooper Development and Design, combining her already successful interior design firm with commercial construction capabilities. Derek lost everything too. His wife Amanda filed for divorce and took half of everything he had left. His former partners sued him for $3 million. He couldn't find work anywhere because Ramona's story had gone viral. Ambitious woman exposes cheating husband and corrupt business partner who tried to poison her. Every news outlet in the state covered it. Derek's face became synonymous with corporate theft and betrayal. Vanessa fared no better. When the investigation revealed her role in processing the fraudulent transfers, Porter Street Bank fired her immediately. The banking regulators launched an investigation into her conduct. Her husband left her when he discovered she'd been helping Mitchell steal from Ramona while pretending to be her best friend. Vanessa called Ramona 47 times in the first week, leaving sobbing voicemails begging for mercy. Ramona never answered once. Claire's life imploded when her husband Thomas confessed to the 6-month affair with Mitchell. She filed for divorce, but the humiliation of being betrayed by both her brother and her husband destroyed her standing in their social circle. Friends stopped calling, invitations dried up. Her own design clients quietly moved to other firms because they didn't want to be associated with the scandal. And Richard Marshall did something Ramona hadn't even requested. He disowned both his children completely. He called Ramona 2 weeks after the party and asked to meet for coffee. They sat in the same cafe where they'd discussed his estate planning months before, but this time Richard looked 20 years older. "I need you to know something," he said heavily. "I went through all the documents Martha flagged. Mitchell forged my signature on papers that would have given him access to borrow against my estate. He was planning to drain my accounts while I was still alive. My own son was going to leave me bankrupt." Ramona said nothing, just let him process his grief. "I've rewritten my will. Everything goes to charity now. Mitchell and Claire get nothing, and I'm making it ironclad so they can't contest it." Richard's hands shook as he lifted his coffee cup. "I raised monsters, Ramona. I don't know how I didn't see it, but I raised men who hurt women and steal from family. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry you were caught in the crossfire of my failures as a father. You didn't poison me, Richard. You didn't steal from me. You're not responsible for your son's choices. But I taught him the world owed him everything. I taught him women were assets to acquire and manage. I taught him that winning mattered more than integrity." Richard's voice cracked. "I created the man who tried to kill you." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Ramona said, "What you do now matters more than what you did before. Break the cycle with how you spend the rest of your life." Richard nodded slowly. "I've started a foundation for domestic violence survivors. I'm funding shelters and legal aid for women trying to escape abusive marriages. I want Mitchell to know every dollar he would have inherited is going to help women like you." Ramona reached across the table and squeezed the old man's hand. "That's a good start." While everyone connected to Mitchell's betrayal faced consequences, Ramona thrived. Cooper Development and Design expanded into 3 new cities within 2 months. She hired award-winning designers, negotiated contracts with major commercial developers, and landed projects worth tens of millions of dollars. Her pregnancy progressed smoothly, and she documented her journey on social media, where she'd gained hundreds of thousands of followers after her story went viral. Women everywhere resonated with her narrative. Brilliant woman betrayed by mediocre men, nearly murdered, rose from the ashes to build an empire. She became a symbol of female resilience and power. Speaking requests poured in. Magazines wanted interviews. Business schools used her case as an example of strategic corporate acquisition. And through it all, Mitchell sank lower and lower. He applied to 63 jobs in the first month. Every single interview ended the same way. Recognition of his name, uncomfortable questions about the poisoning allegations, and a polite dismissal. "We'll be in touch," they'd say, and never call back. He tried using a different name on applications, but background checks always revealed the truth. He was unemployable in any professional capacity. He took work washing dishes at a diner, then bussing tables, then overnight shifts stocking shelves at a grocery store. He lived on ramen noodles and instant coffee. His studio apartment had no furniture except a mattress on the floor and a folding chair. He'd lost 30 pounds from stress and couldn't afford the antidepressants his doctor prescribed. He tried calling Ramona 216 times. She blocked him after the first week. He tried showing up at her office, but security escorted him out. He tried waiting in the parking lot to talk to her, and she called the police for harassment. He tried sending letters, emails, messages through mutual acquaintances. She ignored every attempt. Mitchell was drowning, and nobody was throwing him a rope. 3 months after the anniversary party, Ramona was in her corner office reviewing architectural plans when her assistant buzzed. "Mrs. Cooper, there's a delivery for you." A courier handed her a thick legal envelope. Inside was a civil lawsuit notice. Ramona was suing Mitchell for $6 million. The stolen money, attempted murder damages, emotional distress, business losses, and punitive damages. Her lawyer had included a detailed breakdown showing that even if Mitchell worked minimum wage for the rest of his life and paid every penny to her, he'd never clear the debt. His wages would be garnished forever. He'd be financially ruined until he died. But the envelope contained something else too. A second document, a settlement proposal. The terms weren't about money because Mitchell had none. Instead, the settlement demanded complete psychological reconstruction, 400 hours of community service at a women's shelter, mandatory twice-weekly therapy with progress reports sent to Ramona, a public apology in major newspapers, completion of a domestic violence education program, a court-ordered ankle monitor for 2 years, and absolutely no contact with Ramona or her associates for a minimum of 1 year. At the bottom, a note in Ramona's handwriting, "Sign this, or criminal charges will be filed tomorrow. You'll spend the next decade in prison. Choose quickly." Mitchell read the terms through tears. He was being given a choice between prison or public humiliation and forced re-education. Either way, his old life was gone forever. He called the number listed for Ramona's attorney and agreed to every term without negotiation. The next day, Mitchell reported to Hope House Women's Shelter for his first shift. The director, a stern woman named Angela, looked at him with open disdain. "I've read your file. You tried to poison your pregnant wife. You're only here because you're being forced. But let me be clear. If you cause any problems, show any disrespect, or make any woman here uncomfortable, I will personally make sure you're violated on this agreement and sent to prison. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Get to work. There's boxes to move and cribs to assemble for new arrivals." Mitchell worked in silence, his muscles aching from physical labor his body wasn't used to. Around him, women and children moved through the shelter with haunted eyes. Some had bruises, some flinched at sudden movements, some clutched their children like they might disappear. At the end of his shift, as Mitchell was leaving, a little girl dropped her stuffed rabbit near his feet. He bent to pick it up and handed it to her gently. She looked at him with such fear that Mitchell felt something crack inside his chest. This child was afraid of him the same way Ramona must have been afraid when she realized what he'd done, the same way Melissa must have been terrified in that hospital room, the same way every woman in this shelter had been terrified of a man who was supposed to love her. Mitchell sat in his car in the shelter parking lot and cried until he couldn't breathe. For the first time since the anniversary party, he wasn't crying about what he'd lost. He was crying about what he'd done. Chapter 6. The Price of Her Mercy. 6 months into his court-ordered program, Mitchell Marshall was unrecognizable from the man who'd tried to poison his wife. He'd lost 45 pounds, not from vanity, but from working 3 jobs to make ends meet while volunteering 20-plus hours weekly at Hope House. His hands were calloused from assembling furniture and carrying supply boxes. His expensive haircut had grown out into something shaggy and unkempt because haircuts cost money he didn't have. His apartment remained bare: a mattress, a folding chair, a lamp. His clothes came from thrift stores. His meals were whatever the shelter gave him at the end of his shifts, because the women there had started feeding him once they realized he was skipping meals to save money. Not because they forgave him, but because the same impulse to nurture that made them good mothers made them incapable of watching anyone starve. Mitchell's therapy sessions with Dr. Helen Winters were brutal. She specialized in male entitlement and violence against women, and she didn't let him hide behind excuses or self-pity. "You tried to murder your wife because she was inconvenient to your plans," Dr. Winters said during their 4th session. "Not because you were angry or provoked, not because she did anything wrong, simply because her existence stood between you and money you wanted. That's not a crime of passion, Mitchell. That's calculated evil. I know. Do you? Because you keep talking about your feelings, your guilt, your shame, your suffering. But I haven't heard you once talk about the terror Ramona must have felt, realizing the man sleeping beside her wanted her dead, or the trauma your unborn child will carry knowing their father tried to kill them before they were born, or the psychological damage you caused Melissa by making her believe herself complicit in your evil." Mitchell had no answer. Week after week, Dr. Winters forced him to confront the reality that his transformation wasn't about him feeling better. It was about acknowledging the depth of harm he'd caused and accepting that feeling better might never be possible or deserved. At Hope House, Mitchell was assigned increasingly difficult tasks. He helped women move their belongings from dangerous homes. He installed security systems. He painted rooms and fixed broken appliances. And slowly, reluctantly, the women began to talk to him. A woman named Teresa told him about her husband who'd seemed perfect at first, then gradually became controlling, then violent. "He was just like you probably were," she said while Mitchell assembled a crib for her newborn. "Charming when people were watching, cold when we were alone. By the time I realized what he was, I was trapped with 2 kids and no money." "How did you get out?" Mitchell asked quietly. "I almost didn't. He put me in the hospital 3 times. The 4th time, I knew if I went back he'd kill me." She bounced her baby gently. "I walked out with nothing but my children and the clothes on our backs. Everything I owned is gone. But we're alive." Mitchell thought about Ramona and realized she could easily have been in Teresa's position if his poison had failed differently. If she'd only gotten sick instead of given the meal away. If he'd tried different methods over time. If he'd been smarter about his evil. "I'm sorry," he said, though he wasn't sure what he was apologizing for. "Don't be sorry for me. Be better for the next woman you meet." Another evening, Mitchell was working late at the shelter when a man showed up screaming for his girlfriend. He was drunk, aggressive, pounding on the security door and threatening to break it down. Angela called 911, but police were 15 minutes away, and the man was getting more violent. When he started trying to force the door open, Mitchell didn't think. He walked outside alone and positioned himself between the door and the man. "You need to leave," Mitchell said calmly. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm nobody, but you're not getting inside this building. The police are coming, and you can explain yourself to them, or you can leave now while you still can." The man swung at him. Mitchell took the punch to his jaw, staggered but didn't fall. The man swung again, catching Mitchell in the ribs. Pain exploded through his chest, but Mitchell stayed standing. He didn't fight back. He just stood there blocking the door while the man beat him. By the time police arrived, Mitchell was on the ground, bleeding from his mouth and nose, 2 cracked ribs. But the door was still secured, and every woman inside was safe. The paramedics wanted to take him to the hospital, but Mitchell refused because he couldn't afford it. Angela watched him ice his face in the shelter's break room and said something that surprised him. "That was brave. Stupid, but brave." "I wasn't thinking." "No, you were thinking exactly right. You were thinking about protecting women instead of yourself. First time since you've been here that I've seen anything in you worth respecting." Mitchell went home that night and looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. His face was swollen, his eye was turning purple, and every breath hurt from the cracked ribs. But when he looked at his reflection, he didn't see Mitchell Marshall the businessman. He saw someone different, someone who'd taken a beating to protect women he didn't know. It wasn't redemption, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was something other than the monster he'd been. His therapy sessions began to shift. Dr. Winters acknowledged his progress but warned him against believing it absolved anything. "You're doing what you should have been doing your entire adult life, treating women like human beings deserving of safety and respect. That's not heroism, Mitchell, that's basic decency." "I know. And even if you become the best version of yourself, it doesn't erase what you were. Ramona doesn't owe you forgiveness. Your child doesn't owe you a relationship. The world doesn't owe you redemption just because you stopped being evil." "I understand. Do you want forgiveness?" Mitchell thought for a long time. "I want to not be the man who tried to murder his pregnant wife. I want to look at myself without wanting to die from shame. But forgiveness? I don't deserve that. I don't think I should have that. Maybe living without it is my actual punishment." Dr. Winters made a note. "That's the first honest thing you've said in 6 months." Mitchell completed his mandatory 400 hours at Hope House, then kept volunteering. He started showing up 4 days a week instead of 2. He donated his entire paycheck from his overnight stocking job every month. He learned the names of the children staying there and brought them small toys from thrift stores. He read bedtime stories. He taught a teenager how to change a tire. He helped a grandmother learn to use email so she could stay in touch with her daughter. He wasn't trying to earn anything. He'd simply found the only place where his existence felt like it might do more good than harm. Angela called him into her office 9 months after he started. "I need to tell you something, and you can't contact Ramona about it because that violates your agreement. But she called me last week. She's been monitoring your progress, and she wanted to know if you're actually changing or just performing for evaluation." Mitchell's heart stopped. "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that you're still an entitled piece of garbage who thought his plans mattered more than his wife's life. But I also told her you've saved 3 women from violent encounters, that you work here more than required, and that you donate money you clearly need, that the children trust you, which means something because kids can smell danger on men like a dog smells fear." "Is she going to press charges?" "I don't know, but she asked me about something specific. She wanted to know if I thought your change was real or if you were just trying to avoid prison." "What did you say?" Angela leaned back in her chair. "I said I think you're genuinely horrified by what you were. I said I think you'd rather be poor and helping people than rich and evil. But I also said that doesn't mean you deserve mercy. It just means you're finally acting like a decent human being, and that's the absolute minimum." Mitchell nodded slowly. "That's fair. She also mentioned she's pregnant. 7 months now." The words hit Mitchell like a physical blow. His child, the baby he'd tried to kill, growing and thriving inside the woman he'd tried to poison. The baby who would be born in 2 months and would grow up knowing their father was a monster. "I hope she has a healthy delivery," Mitchell managed. "She will, because unlike you, she's surrounded by people who actually care about her well-being instead of seeing her as an obstacle." Mitchell left that meeting and walked to the park near his apartment. He sat on a bench and thought about his child. Would they ever meet? Would Ramona let him anywhere near their life? Did he even have the right to ask? He pulled out his phone and opened a note file where he'd been writing letters he'd never send. This one was to his child. "I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if your mother will ever tell you I tried to write to you. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I tried to take your life before you even got to live it. I'm sorry your father is someone you'll be ashamed of. I'm sorry I can't be the man you deserve. All I can do now is try to be someone who helps other people, even if I can never help you. I love you, even though I have no right to, even though I don't deserve to. I love you." He saved the note with the date and closed his phone. Then he went back to Hope House for his evening shift, where he belonged more than anywhere else in the world. Chapter 7. The Man Who Learned. Too late 1 year. That's how long Mitchell had been living in the ruins of his old life, and he barely recognized himself anymore. He stared at his reflection while shaving in the tiny bathroom of his studio apartment and saw a stranger. Gaunt face, hollow eyes, hands scarred from manual labor. The expensive watches were gone, the tailored suits donated to charity, the confidence and entitlement stripped away to reveal something raw and broken underneath. His therapy with Dr. Winters had evolved beyond simple accountability. Now they were excavating the foundation of his beliefs, tearing down the toxic structure his father had built brick by brick. "Tell me about the first time your father taught you women were less than men," Dr. Winters said during one session. Mitchell thought back through decades of memories. "I was 7. My mother was crying because he'd missed her birthday for a business meeting. He told me that successful men don't let women dictate their schedules, that my mother needed to understand priorities." And you believed him. I worshipped him. He was successful, powerful, respected, everything I wanted to be. Your father also taught your brother Tyler, the one in federal prison for killing his wife. Mitchell's head snapped up. "How do you know about Tyler?" "I'm your therapist, Mitchell. I know everything. And I need you to understand something. The violence in your family isn't random. It's deliberate. It's taught. Your grandfather's first wife died under suspicious circumstances. Your father emotionally abused your mother until she became a shell of a person. Your brother murdered his wife, and you tried to poison yours. This is your family legacy." The weight of that truth crushed Mitchell's chest. "So I never had a chance." "No," Dr. Winters said sharply. "You absolutely had a chance. Every single day you had a chance to choose differently. But you chose to follow the pattern. You chose to see Ramona as property instead of a person. You chose to value money over her life. The fact that you were raised in rot doesn't excuse you becoming rotten. It just explains where you learned to be." Mitchell left that session and did something he'd been avoiding for months. He wrote to his brother Tyler in federal prison. The letter was short. "I almost became you. I tried to poison my pregnant wife for money. But I got caught and now I'm living with the consequences. I need to know, do you ever wish you'd chosen differently? Do you think about her? Does being locked up change what you are inside?" 3 weeks later, a response came. Tyler's handwriting was messy, angry. "You think prison changed me? It made me worse. Every day I'm reminded I lost everything, and for what? Because Sarah wanted to leave me? Because she thought she deserved half my inheritance? I should have hidden it better, not killed her differently. You got lucky, little brother. You didn't have to pull the trigger. Learn from my mistake. Next time, don't get caught." Mitchell read the letter 3 times, then burned it in his kitchen sink. His brother was irredeemable, unrepentant, a cautionary tale of what Mitchell would have become if Ramona hadn't survived and exposed him. He called Dr. Winters immediately and read her the letter over the phone. "That's your future if you stop doing the work," she said bluntly. "That's who you are if you decide feeling better about yourself is more important than actually becoming better. Your brother isn't sorry. He's just sorry he got caught. Are you any different?" "I think I am. God, I hope I am. Hope isn't enough. Prove it every single day." At Hope House, Mitchell had become a fixture. The women no longer looked at him with suspicion. They asked him to help with their problems, fixing leaky faucets, moving furniture, teaching their sons how to change oil in cars. He'd become useful in a way he'd never been in his old life, where his value came from status and money. A woman named Diana had been at the shelter for 2 months with her 3 children. Her husband had broken her collarbone during an argument about dinner. She was terrified to leave the shelter because she had no job skills, no money, and nowhere to go. Mitchell had spent hours helping her practice job interview questions, typing her resume on the shelter's ancient computer, and encouraging her to believe she could make it. When Diana got hired at a grocery store and secured an apartment through housing assistance, she hugged Mitchell so tightly he could barely breathe. "Thank you," she whispered. "Nobody's ever helped me like this without wanting something back. You did this yourself. I just reminded you what you're capable of. No, you showed me not all men are monsters. That matters more than you know." After Diana and her children left, Mitchell sat in the empty room they'd occupied and cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that this, right here, was more meaningful than anything he'd achieved in his old life. Helping one woman escape violence mattered more than $1 million or a fancy title or a corner office. Why had it taken him so long to understand something so simple? Angela found him there an hour later. "You okay?" "I wasted my entire life," Mitchell said. 34 years chasing money and status, and it meant nothing. This is the first time I've ever felt like I'm actually doing something that matters. Welcome to being a decent human being. Doesn't pay well, but the benefits are worth it. Mitchell's mandatory program was supposed to end after 1 year, but he'd already decided he wouldn't stop. This was his life now. The shelter was where he belonged. These women and children were his purpose, not redemption, not forgiveness, just the daily practice of being someone who helped instead of hurt. But then something happened that shattered his carefully constructed new reality. He was restocking shelves at the grocery store during his overnight shift when a woman approached him. She was visibly pregnant, about 8 months along, with dark circles under her eyes and clothes that looked slept in. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Do you work here?" Mitchell turned and froze. Melissa Wilson stood 2 feet away, her hand resting on her swollen belly, looking at him like she'd seen a ghost. "Mitchell," she breathed. They stared at each other in the fluorescent lights of the grocery store at 3 in the morning, 2 people whose lives had been destroyed by the same man's evil. Finally, Mitchell found his voice. "You're pregnant." 8 months. Melissa's hand moved protectively over her stomach. "It's yours. From before everything." The world tilted sideways. Mitchell gripped the shelf to steady himself. "Does Ramona know?" "Yes, she's been helping me. Gave me money for prenatal care and connected me with resources. She's the only reason I'm not homeless right now." "She's helping you? After everything we did to her?" "She said one monster was enough. She wasn't going to let me become another victim just because I was stupid enough to sleep with you." Melissa's voice cracked. "I never told you because I was terrified that you'd want me to get rid of it like you wanted to get rid of yours with Ramona." Mitchell felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "I wouldn't have asked that." "Wouldn't you? You tried to poison your pregnant wife. Why would I think you'd care about a baby with your mistress?" She was right. Of course she was right. The man he'd been would absolutely have demanded she terminate the pregnancy to avoid complication. "I'm sorry, Melissa, for all of it. For using you. For making you believe I loved you. For nearly getting you killed. I don't care about your apologies. I care about making sure this baby has a chance at a decent life." Melissa pulled a paper from her purse. "Ramona's lawyer sent me this. It's a custody agreement. If you want to be involved in this child's life, you have to continue therapy, continue working at the shelter, pay child support as soon as you're financially able, and never contact me outside of supervised visitation. And if you violate any term, you lose all parental rights permanently." Mitchell took the document with shaking hands. His child. Not the one with Ramona, but another baby he'd helped create. Another life connected to him that deserved better than what he was. "I'll sign it," he said immediately. "And I'll do everything required. I don't deserve to be a father, but maybe I can at least not be a complete failure at it." "Too late to not be a failure. But you can try not to be poison." Melissa walked away down the aisle, leaving Mitchell standing among cereal boxes and canned goods, holding a custody agreement that proved his evil had created consequences he'd spend the rest of his life trying to navigate. He had 2 children now, one with Ramona, who would be born soon and who he might never meet, one with Melissa, who he'd see under supervised conditions if he proved himself worthy. both conceived by a man who'd tried to murder their mothers. Mitchell finished his shift in a daze, then went home and called Dr. Winter's emergency line. She answered on the third ring. "Melissa is pregnant. It's mine. She's due in a month." Dr. Winters was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified, ashamed, grateful she didn't get rid of it even though I would have probably asked her to if I'd known. Grateful Ramona is helping her instead of destroying her, and completely aware that I'm about to be a father twice over to children I have no right to raise." "Good. That's the appropriate response. Now, what are you going to do about it?" "Whatever the custody agreement requires. Continue therapy, continue at Hope House. Try to become someone these kids won't be completely ashamed of." "That's all you can do, Mitchell. Show up. Do the work. Hope that someday your children will understand you became someone different from who you were." After he hung up, Mitchell opened his laptop and created a new document. He labeled it "Letters to My Children" and began writing. Everything he needed them to know, everything he wished he could tell them in person but probably never would. His failures, his transformation, his hopes that they'd be better than him, his promise to support them from whatever distance they'd allow. He wrote until sunrise, then went to Hope House for his morning shift, because that's what his life was now, showing up, doing the work, and hoping it would somehow be enough. Chapter 8. The truth about Melissa Ramona was 34 weeks pregnant when her assistant informed her that Melissa Wilson had requested a meeting. Ramona's first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won. What could Melissa possibly want after all these months? They met at a cafe neither had frequented before, neutral territory. Melissa arrived early, visibly pregnant in a dress that looked inexpensive but clean. She stood when Ramona entered, and the two women stared at each other for a long moment before sitting down. "Thank you for meeting me," Melissa said quietly. "I almost didn't. What do you want?" "I wanted to thank you. For the money, for connecting me with your attorney, for not destroying me when you had every reason to. You could have made me lose everything, but you helped me instead. I don't understand why." Ramona ordered tea before answering. "Because you weren't the villain in this story, Melissa. You were stupid and selfish, but you weren't evil. There's a difference. I slept with your husband for 3 years. I knew he was married. I told myself you were a bad wife who didn't appreciate him, but I knew that was a lie. I wanted what you had, and I didn't care what it cost you. I know. And it hurt. But Mitchell was the one who made vows to me, not you. He's the one who stole from me, lied to me, and tried to murder me. You were just another woman he manipulated." Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "He almost killed us both. If you hadn't given me that breakfast, you'd be dead, and I'd be in prison for helping him. But I did give you the breakfast, and we're both sitting here alive. What's done is done." "Are you really going to let him see his baby?" Ramona's hand moved to her belly instinctively. "I haven't decided yet. The custody agreement my lawyer drafted gives him supervised visitation, but only after he proves consistent change. That could take years." "He's different now," Melissa said. "I saw him at the grocery store. He looks like someone broke him into pieces and put him back together wrong. He's working 3 jobs and volunteering at that women's shelter constantly. My caseworker told me he's helping women escape abusive situations." "Good. That's what he should have been doing his entire life." "Do you think people can really change, or is he just scared of prison?" Ramona considered this carefully. "I think some people can change when faced with losing everything, but change doesn't erase what they did. Mitchell can become the best version of himself, volunteer every day, donate all his money, and help 1,000 women, and it still won't change the fact that he tried to murder me while I carried his child. That's who he is at his core. Whether he's changed that core or just learned to hide it better, I don't know." Melissa nodded slowly. "I'm scared to raise his baby. Scared there's something evil in him genetically that will show up in this child. Evil isn't genetic, it's taught. Don't teach your child that women are disposable or that money matters more than people, and you'll be fine." "Ramona, There's something else I need to tell you. Something I held back before because I was afraid. Ramona's attention sharpened. What? Mitchell's family. There's a pattern. His brother Tyler is in federal prison for murdering his wife 12 years ago. But it wasn't a home invasion like the family claims. Tyler beat her to death because she threatened to divorce him and take half his inheritance. Mitchell's father paid prosecutors and buried evidence, made it disappear from public records. I know, my investigator found that months ago. But did you know about Mitchell's grandfather? About Richard's father? I know his first wife died under suspicious circumstances in the 60s. It wasn't suspicious. She drowned in their pool after an argument about money. There were bruises on her arms consistent with being held underwater. But the coroner was friends with the family, so the death certificate said accidental drowning. Richard's mother told me this story once at a family dinner when she was drunk. She said the Marshall men had a curse. They couldn't let women leave them. They'd rather see them dead than divorced. Ramona's blood ran cold. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're dealing with. It's not just Mitchell being evil, it's generations of men taught that women are property to control. Richard Marshall emotionally destroyed his wife until she became this quiet ghost who just agreed with everything he said. Tyler Marshall killed his wife when she tried to leave, and Mitchell tried to poison you rather than let you realize what he was and walk away with your business. This is who they are, all of them. Richard seems genuinely remorseful now. Richard feels guilty because his sons turned out to be monsters, but he created them, Ramona. He taught Mitchell and Tyler that women existed to serve their ambitions. And now there's another generation coming, my baby, your baby, children with Marshall blood. What if the violence is in them? It's not. Violence is learned, not inherited. Are you sure? Because I'm terrified I'm about to bring a child into the world who has his father's capacity for evil. Ramona reached across the table and took Melissa's hand, surprising both of them. Listen to me. Your baby isn't Mitchell. Your baby is a blank slate who deserves a chance to be loved and raised without toxic beliefs. You can break the cycle by refusing to pass it forward. That's how you beat the Marshall family curse. You raise this child to respect women, to value people over money, to understand that strength isn't about control. Melissa squeezed her hand gratefully. What about Mitchell? Do you think his change is real? Or is he just performing until he gets what he wants? I honestly don't know. My investigator has been watching him for a year. Everything suggests genuine transformation. But is that enough to risk letting him near our children? I'm not sure. The shelter director called me. She said Mitchell took a beating protecting women from a violent ex-boyfriend, stood there and got punched in the face rather than let the man near the door. She said it was the first time she'd seen him put someone else's safety above his own comfort. That's good, but one good act doesn't erase attempted murder. I know, but maybe 1,000 good acts start to balance it? Ramona pulled her hand back. That's not how justice works, Melissa. Mitchell doesn't get to work off his debt through volunteer hours like this is community service for a parking ticket. He tried to kill me. He stole from me. He betrayed me completely. The fact that he's ashamed now doesn't undo the harm. Then why did you help me? Why not destroy me too? Because you didn't try to kill anyone. You were selfish and stupid, but you weren't violent. There's a line between mistakes and evil, and you didn't cross it. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Melissa said, I'm due in 2 weeks. The custody agreement you drafted says Mitchell can have supervised visits if he completes all requirements. Are you going to honor that? If he does the work, yes. But I'll be monitoring every visit. And if I see even a hint of his old entitlement or violence, he loses access permanently. Fair enough. Melissa stood awkwardly, her hand supporting her back. Thank you again, Ramona, for everything. You didn't have to be kind to me, but you were. That matters more than you know. After Melissa left, Ramona sat alone in the cafe and thought about the Marshall family curse. 3 generations of men who hurt women. But she was going to have a daughter, not a son. A little girl who would grow up watching her mother be strong, independent, and unbreakable. A little girl who would learn that women bowed to no one. The Marshall curse ended with her. Mitchell's transformation didn't matter. His redemption was irrelevant. What mattered was that Ramona was about to raise a daughter who would never accept being treated the way martial men treated women. That was how you broke generational trauma, not by forgiving the men who caused it, but by raising daughters who refused to tolerate it. Ramona placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "You're going to be so strong, little one. Stronger than your father, stronger than his whole rotten family line. And you'll never have to wonder if you're loved, because I'll show you every single day." Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. Mitchell called the office again. 10th time this month. Still blocking him? Ramona typed back, "Yes. He doesn't get to talk to me just because he's changed. Some bridges stay burned." She finished her tea and went back to work, where she had an empire to run and a daughter to prepare for. Mitchell Marshall had tried to destroy her. Instead, she'd destroyed him, built something beautiful from the ruins, and was about to bring a new life into the world that would know nothing of poison or betrayal. Only strength, only love, only power. That was the best revenge of all. Chapter 9. The Test of His Soul. The call came through Mitchell's attorney on a Tuesday morning while Mitchell was assembling bunk beds at Hope House. His phone rang, he saw the name on the screen, and his hands started shaking so badly he had to set down his tools. "Mitchell, it's Harold. Ramona wants a meeting." "When?" "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Her office. Come alone." Mitchell barely slept that night. He had no idea what Ramona wanted, but after a year of silence, anything she had to say would be significant. He showed up at Cooper Development and Design 15 minutes early, wearing his only decent outfit, khakis and a button-down shirt he'd ironed 3 times to get the wrinkles out. The lobby alone reminded him of everything he'd lost. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, employees in expensive suits moving with purpose. The receptionist barely looked at him. "Mrs. Cooper will see you now. Top floor." The elevator ride felt eternal. When the doors opened, Mitchell stepped into an executive suite that took his breath away, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, contemporary furniture that probably cost more than his annual income, and awards displayed on shelves showing Ramona's success. And there, behind a massive desk, sat his ex-wife. She was 9 months pregnant and absolutely radiant. Her hair was styled perfectly, her maternity dress looked designer, and she wore authority like some people wear jewelry. She didn't stand when he entered, didn't smile, just gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, Mitchell." He sat, feeling like a guilty child called to the principal's office. Behind Ramona stood 5 other people, her attorney Patricia, a woman he didn't recognize who held a newborn baby, Hope House director Angela, Dr. Winters his therapist, and a man in a suit who was probably a social worker. "You're probably wondering why I asked you here," Ramona said. Her voice was cold, professional. "Yes. I've been monitoring your activities for the past year. I know about your volunteer work, your therapy sessions, your jobs, your financial donations to Hope House. I know you took a beating to protect women from a violent ex-boyfriend. I know you've been helping Melissa prepare for her baby without asking for anything in return. I know every detail of how you've spent the past 12 months. Mitchell said nothing, waiting. "I also know," Ramona continued, "that Melissa gave birth 3 days ago to your son. She named him James. He's healthy. And she's agreed to allow you supervised visitation if you continue meeting all the requirements of your custody agreement." Mitchell's eyes moved to the woman holding the newborn, and his heart stopped. That was his child, his son, born from the affair that had helped destroy his marriage. "Can I see him?" "In a moment. First, we need to have a conversation." Ramona's expression didn't soften. "Mitchell Marshall, you tried to murder me. You tried to murder our unborn baby. You stole nearly $900,000 from my company. You betrayed me with your secretary for 3 years while your family and friends laughed at my stupidity. You came from a family where violence against women has been passed down like a genetic disease for 3 generations. By every measure imaginable, you should be in federal prison right now, serving decades for attempted murder and fraud." I know. I deserve to be. But I didn't press charges. Instead, I forced you into a program designed to break you down and rebuild you into something resembling a decent human being. And from what everyone tells me, you've done the work. You've changed your behavior, confronted your beliefs, and dedicated yourself to helping the kind of women you once viewed as disposable. Mitchell couldn't meet her eyes. I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. I need to know if your transformation is real or if you're just a clever actor playing a long game to avoid prison. Ramona leaned forward slightly, her hands folded on the desk. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you're going to answer them honestly. Because everyone in this room will know if you're lying, and that will determine everything about your future. Okay. First question. If you could go back to the man you were, successful, wealthy, respected, with your old life intact, would you choose that over who you are now? Mitchell didn't hesitate. No, that man was a monster. I'd rather be poor and broken but genuinely trying to be good than rich and successful but rotten inside. My old life was built on hurting people. I don't want that back. Ramona's expression didn't change. Second question. Do you believe you deserve forgiveness for what you did to me? This time, Mitchell took longer to answer. No, I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve mercy. I don't deserve to be in the same room with you or anywhere near our child. What I did was unforgivable, and I accept that. I'm not doing the work to earn your forgiveness. I'm doing it because I can't live with being the man I was. Third question. Why should I let you anywhere near my daughter when you tried to kill her before she was born? Mitchell's voice broke. You shouldn't. If I were you, I'd keep her as far from me as possible for the rest of her life. But if you're asking what I would do if you allowed me into her world, I'd spend every moment proving I'm not the man who tried to poison her. I'd show up for supervised visits and accept any boundaries you set. I'd pay what I owe. I'd continue therapy and volunteering. I'd let her know through my actions that she's loved, even if I can never be a real father to her. But honestly, Ramona, I don't think you should let me near her. I think you should protect her from me. The room was silent. Dr. Winters was watching him carefully. Angela had her arms crossed but looked thoughtful. Patricia, the attorney, was taking notes. The woman holding Melissa's baby swayed gently, and the infant made soft sounds. Ramona stood, moving around the desk with the careful grace of someone very pregnant. She stopped directly in front of Mitchell, and he kept his eyes down, unable to face her. Look at me, she commanded. He looked up, and what he saw in her eyes wasn't hatred or anger. It was calculation, assessment. She was judging whether he was worth the risk. I've thought about this for months, Ramona said. About whether someone who tried to murder me deserves a second chance with the life they tried to destroy. About whether your change is real or performance. About whether our daughter deserves to know her father or deserves to be protected from him. What did you decide? That I'm powerful enough to choose mercy over revenge, but smart enough to make mercy conditional. That justice isn't always about punishment, but it's always about consequences. That my daughter deserves the truth about where she came from, but also deserves protection if that truth is dangerous. Ramona walked back to her desk and pulled out a document. This is a modified custody agreement. You'll have supervised visitation with our daughter once per month for 2 hours. Those visits will be monitored by a social worker, and any concerning behavior means you lose access permanently. You'll continue therapy indefinitely, paying for it yourself. You'll continue working at Hope House at least 20 hours per week. You'll pay back what you stole through a payment plan that will take 30 years to complete. You'll attend parenting classes, and you'll sign away any future claims to my company, my money, or any inheritance rights. She slid the document across the desk. Sign this, and you get a chance to be part of your children's lives. Refuse, and I press criminal charges for attempted murder. You'll spend the next 20 years in prison, and you'll never see either of your children again. Choose. Mitchell read through the terms with blurring vision. Everything Ramona demanded was reasonable. More than reasonable. She was offering him something he didn't deserve and had no right to expect. I'll sign it. Good. But before you do, I need you to understand something. Ramona's voice dropped to something colder than ice. I'm not doing this for you. I'm not doing this because you've changed, or because I believe in redemption, or because I think you deserve a second chance. I'm doing this because my daughter deserves the truth about her father, good and bad. Because Melissa's son deserves a father who shows up even if he's broken. Because I'm powerful enough to choose mercy while maintaining absolute control over your access to our lives. She placed both hands on her belly. You tried to destroy me, Mitchell, but I'm standing here running an empire while you're stocking shelves at a grocery store. I'm about to give birth to a beautiful daughter while you're living in a studio apartment with no furniture. I have everything you wanted to steal, and you have nothing except what I allow you to have. That's the power dynamic for the rest of your life. I control whether you see your children. I control whether criminal charges get filed. I control every aspect of how you exist in their world. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't a happy ending where the husband learns his lesson and the family reunites. This is me choosing to give you the smallest possible role in your children's lives while I remain the center of their universe. You'll watch from the outside. You'll get monthly visits while I get every day. You'll know them as that man who comes to visit sometimes, while I'm their mother who raises them and loves them and shows them what real strength looks like. Mitchell signed the document with shaking hands. Thank you. I know I don't deserve this, but thank you. Don't thank me. Prove you're worth the risk I'm taking. Ramona nodded to the woman holding the newborn. That's Melissa's caseworker. She's here to facilitate your first supervised visit with your son, James. You'll have 30 minutes while I watch. Show me how you interact with a child who carries your DNA, but deserves better than your legacy. The caseworker handed the baby to Mitchell carefully. He cradled the tiny infant in his arms, and something in his chest shattered. This was his son. His child. Born from his affair, yes, but innocent of all the evil that created him. James opened his eyes and looked at Mitchell with unfocused newborn vision, and Mitchell started crying. I'm sorry, he whispered to the baby. I'm sorry your father is me. I'm sorry you'll grow up knowing I'm the man who tried to poison your mother and your brother's mother. I'm sorry for everything you'll have to carry because of my name, but I promise I'll try to be better. I'll try to be someone you're not completely ashamed of. Ramona watched this interaction with an unreadable expression. After 30 minutes, the caseworker took James back, and Mitchell stood there feeling emptier than he'd ever felt in his life. Your first visit with our daughter will be scheduled after she's born, Ramona said. That will be in approximately 2 weeks. The social worker will contact you with the details. Don't be late. Don't show up drunk or high. Don't bring anything inappropriate. And don't think for 1 second that this means you're forgiven. You're not. You never will be. You're simply being given a chance to not be completely absent from their lives. I understand. I won't let you down. You already let me down in the worst possible way, Mitchell. Now you're just trying not to let our children down. That's a much lower bar, but it's the only one that matters anymore. Ramona stood with effort, one hand supporting her belly. Get out of my office. I have an empire to run and a daughter to prepare for. The next time I see you will be in a supervised visitation room where you'll meet the child you tried to murder. Think about that before you show up. Mitchell left Cooper Development and Design feeling like his chest had been carved open. He'd been given something he didn't deserve, a chance, a tiny thread of connection to his children. And he knew that if he messed this up, if he gave Ramona even one reason to doubt his transformation, that thread would be cut permanently, and he'd spend the rest of his life knowing his children existed somewhere in the world, but he'd never see them again. That night, he wrote in his journal, Today I held my son for the first time. Today I learned I'll get to meet my daughter in 2 weeks. Today I was given mercy I don't deserve. Now I have to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the risk Ramona took. God help me not to fail them. Chapter 10. The Woman Who Owns His Soul. 14 days later, Ramona gave birth to Ivy Michelle Cooper, not Marshall. Cooper. Her daughter would carry her mother's name and strength, not her father's broken legacy. Mitchell's first supervised visit happened in a small room with yellow walls. Patricia, the social worker, laid out the rules while Ramona sat holding their daughter. "You sit where I tell you. Any inappropriate behavior, this ends permanently." When Ramona placed Ivy in Mitchell's arms, he stared at the baby he'd tried to murder and broke down. "I'm your father. I don't deserve to be, but I am. Your mother saved you by surviving me." "Time," Patricia announced after 15 minutes. Mitchell handed Ivy back, and Ramona settled into feeding her. "My company just landed a $50 million contract. I've expanded into 6 cities. Forbes wants to interview me. My life is perfect." The unspoken message hung heavy. Her life thrived, while his remained destroyed. "What will you tell Ivy about me?" Mitchell asked quietly. "The truth. When she's old enough, I'll tell her you tried to poison us, that you were caught and forced to change. Then I'll let her decide what that means." Patricia cleared her throat. 5 minutes remaining. When time ended, Mitchell stood. "When can I see her again?" 1 month. Same rules. Miss it or violate anything, you lose access forever." "I know you will show up," Ramona said coldly, "because losing access to Ivy is the one thing you actually fear. That's why I control it, Mitchell. It's the only power over you that matters." 2 years passed. Mitchell worked 3 minimum-wage jobs, volunteered at Hope House, attended therapy twice weekly, and saw Ivy once a month for supervised visits. The reports always said the same thing: appropriate behavior, genuine affection, no concerns. But the reports didn't capture the crushing reality. Mitchell lived in a bare apartment, donated every spare dollar to the shelter, and carried guilt so heavy he admitted to Dr. Winters he thought about dying every day. "I won't act on it," he told his therapist. "That would be abandoning my children the same way I abandoned Ramona when I tried to murder her." "Your children need a present father, not a suffering martyr," Dr. Winters said firmly. At Hope House, Mitchell had become indispensable. When a woman's armed ex-husband showed up threatening to kill everyone, Mitchell walked outside alone and stood between the gunman and the door. A shot was fired near his feet. He didn't move. He talked the man down until police arrived. Angela called Ramona afterward. He was willing to die to protect women he didn't know. He said his death would have meant something. Ramona sat in her office processing this. The man who tried to poison his wife had just taken a bullet for strangers. She called Dr. Winters. "Is his change real?" "It's real but fragile. He's not dangerous to others anymore, but he's dangerous to himself. He views his life as having negative value. That's not the man who tried to murder you." When Ivy turned 3, Ramona made a surprising decision. She invited Mitchell to the party, not as a guest, but to set up decorations and clean. He accepted immediately, arrived early, and stayed in the background the entire time. At one point, Ivy ran to him with a broken toy. "Fix?" Mitchell knelt down. "Let me see, sweetheart." He repaired it carefully. Ivy hugged his leg. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Not Daddy, just the nice man who fixed things." After everyone left, Ramona found Mitchell in the kitchen. She studied his face. Grey hair at his temples, deep lines, the wear of someone broken down by years of manual labor. "Do you resent me?" she asked. "For destroying your life? For having everything while you have nothing?" Mitchell thought carefully. "Sometimes I resent the circumstances, but resent you? No. You did what you had to do to survive what I tried to do to you. That's something to respect." "What do you want, Mitchell?" "For Ivy to be happy. For you to live an extraordinary life. And maybe, if I'm allowed one selfish wish, for Ivy to know someday that I'm her father. Not for her to forgive me, just to know the truth." Ramona made her decision. Starting next month, unsupervised visits. 1 Saturday per month, 6 hours. Violate my trust, and it's over permanently. Mitchell's eyes filled with tears. Don't thank me. You've earned this much. And when Ivy turns 5, I'm telling her everything. What you did, what happened, how you've tried to change. Then she decides how much of a relationship she wants. Now get out. I have a daughter to put to bed. 5 years after the anniversary party, Ramona sat in her office overlooking the empire she'd built. 15 cities, Forbes covers, marriage proposals from successful men she'd declined, everything she'd ever wanted, and a daughter who was brilliant and completely hers. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Mitchell, him and Ivy at the zoo, both laughing. She asked why I only see her once a month. I told her it was complicated. She said that's okay because she doesn't get to see the zoo animals much either. Thank you. Ramona stared at the photo. They'd never be a family. But they were something, a father and daughter trying to build a relationship in the ruins he'd created. She texted back, "Next month when she turns 5, we tell her everything. Be ready for hard questions." His response came immediately. "I'll answer anything honestly. She deserves that." Ramona looked out at the city she'd conquered. Mitchell Marshall tried to poison her and steal everything. Instead, she completely destroyed him, took his company, his money, his reputation, his entire life, and left him just enough to survive and remember what he'd lost. He would spend forever earning monthly visits with a daughter who barely knew him, working poverty wages while she ruled an empire, helping women at shelters while carrying crushing guilt until he died. That was worse than prison. That was perfect revenge. The most powerful revenge wasn't killing your enemy, it was letting them live to witness your triumph every single day, knowing they'd never touch it, never be part of it, never escape what they'd done. Mitchell Marshall tried to destroy Ramona Cooper. Instead, she became a legend, raised their daughter in luxury and love, and controlled his entire existence like a queen, deciding if a peasant could enter her kingdom. She didn't just survive. She completely destroyed him and built something beautiful from his ashes. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.